This is Doyle Wolfgang von Frankenstein, and you're watching.
Think for a second. Who are some people that you really like how they dress? If there's a few, do they have anything in common in the way that they dress with each other? Do you notice any reoccurring things that you're drawn to when buying new clothes? Think of who you are, your personality, and your temperament. Does your fashion sense reflect part of that in any way at all? I'm not saying it has to, but I would say this is a good spot to spot. I'm not saying it has to, but I would say this is a good start to spot. I'm not saying it has to, but I would say this is a good place to start if you wanted to try something different with your fashion and have it be more unique to who you are. The way you dress can tell a lot about you. So you have a lot of control over how you're perceived by other people. Clothing can be used to tell a story or even invoke a feeling from you or others. And I personally think having your style suit you and who you are can make you feel way more connected to yourself. I'm constantly changing and finding out new things about myself all the time. I know a lot of you watching this video can relate to that in some way. So when I look back at old photos with drastically different style choices, it reminds me of my mindset at the moment, whether I was just getting into fashion or wanting to have way more eyes on me than I'd prefer now. It's just fun to see your style evolve with you. And it's especially a special feeling to see really old photos of yourself and wish they could just be burned from existence. In this video, I want to talk about how someone who doesn't quite know which direction to move in with their style, if they want to change, of course, and how they could just find some inspiration or ideas on where to start. These are some things that helped me branch out. You can simply dress for your lifestyle, wear things that are practical, comfortable, and have functionality that makes your everyday life easier. If functionality isn't something you're quite looking for, but still wanted to take inspiration from your lifestyle, job, hobby, or whatever it is, here's an example on how the Misfits did this to get their now famous horror punk look that's synonymous with the band.
I'll be honest, the biggest influence on me when it came time for the image was the Ramones. Glenn and I used to hang out at CBGB's in Manhattan, and we were down there, and he looked like your average guy, and I looked like your average guy, and we were just hanging around. And in walked the Ramones, and they looked like an army. They come walking through the door, and all four of them looked the same. And you looked at them, and in the whole room, you knew right away who was in the band and who wasn't.
Yeah.
And when I looked at that, I said to myself, now that's the kind of band I want. When they walk into a room, everybody turns around, and you can tell if you're scattered throughout 1,000 people, who's in the band. It's very easy to tell. And then each individual in the band has a slightly different look. We're not clones of each other. Everybody's got a little bit of slightly different image. And I think it's important that each person in the band develops that image themselves.
The two band members were very into classic horror movies, so they quickly thought of a horror-themed direction to move the band into. Fun fact, the Misfits logo is actually from an old horror movie called The Crimson Ghost. Their trademark looks are clearly inspired by some famous vaudeville monsters and villains, along with the guitarist's pretty long stage name. Metal studs, spikes, and even bolts adorned their stage gear. I can't find exactly what it was, but Jerry and Doyle's father, the guitarist and the bass player, had owned a company that produced these metal parts that they used to bring their looks to life. They use lots of metal and lots of black leather. The guitar player even has a customized choker with 2 bolts that give him a look reminiscent of the monster from the original Frankenstein movie. I might try to make one of these myself. The visual aspect of the band is just one of the parts that I love so much. It's just a huge reason that I love the band so much, and why I'll find a reason to fit it into almost anything, including these videos. Now, I'm also a huge music fan, so I love to wear band tees a lot, just because of how close they are and important to me. Not to mention, I like the graphics on them. Maybe keep this one to a minimum, or at least just keep in mind that buying a shirt from a popular artist that you enjoy at the moment might be fine to wear right now, but if something controversial connected to the artist or band happens in the future, people are going to have mixed feelings about the shirt. There was this guy I would always run into a while ago. He always had these makeshift steel pieces bent into various shapes, hanging from jewelry or embedded into jackets or satchel bags he was wearing. I asked him about them one time because I thought they were really cool and so different from what I usually see on people. That's when he opened up and told me all about his personal journey on practicing the trade of metalworking and how eventually he wants to work for the city as a welder. Every time I would see this guy, he would have new jewelry pieces that he made as side projects. So I just thought that was super cool. It was cool to see and learn about why he wore things like that. This clearly showed off his passion and his hobbies in a very creative way. He did it in a pretty fashionable way too, I think. I don't think he was wearing it strictly for someone to ask him about it. This shows how fashion can tell a little bit about yourself and even get people to start talking to each other. Of course, if you look a certain way, people might not be so inclined to come up and talk to you. But you should definitely dress for yourself. Do it for you. These are a few things that helped me get out of my comfort zone and helped me find more of my style. If someone suggests something might look good on you, maybe try it to see for yourself. If it's out of your comfort zone, you might just find something that you never would have tried otherwise actually looks pretty good on you and suits your style. Let things you like inspire you. You don't have to go overboard with this one. Maybe you like how a nice minimalistic outfit can look. For example, when I think of Gothic literature, I think of Edgar Allan Poe. And I think of the Raven. When I think of ravens, I think of black, dark colors like blue, cold colors that match the gloomy atmosphere of the works like that. Just an example on how I personally would take inspiration from something like that without doing way too much. But you can get pretty creative with this. Again, this video is just for inspiration or examples on how I do these kind of things. At the end of the day, do what makes you comfortable. If you're not comfortable in it, you're not gonna wear it. Now, I wouldn't recommend you go out and spend a bunch of money redoing your entire wardrobe all at once. This is exactly how you accumulate clothing that you don't want and you don't wear. Instead, let yourself slowly try new things and give it some time to see how you feel in it. This goes more with busier and trendy clothing. If you have more trendy pieces in your wardrobe, it's more likely that a lot of things just are not going to go with each other. But if that's what you want, then by all means go for it. There's a fine line between constructive criticism and others putting you down because you simply look too different. If you have a group of friends you notice dress similarly, think of why that is. Is it because you're all into the same kind of things and aesthetic? Or is it because nobody wants to deviate too much from what's considered safe? If you find yourself in this situation and you do want to dress differently than you do now, try something different and see what happens. How are they gonna react? If you're friends with sound-minded, secure people, and you try something out of your comfort zone but objectively looks good on you, I'm sure they will let you know. If you're not comfortable in it, even after wearing it multiple ways, don't wear it and get rid of it responsibly. Resell it, take it to a thrift shop, maybe even make something else out of it if you have the ability to. One thing that I noticed is even if you really like how something looks on somebody else, it might not always look the best on you. But it's best not to dwell on it and move on, find something else that does work for you. If they don't like it, maybe ask them exactly why they don't. And just take it with a grain of salt, because ultimately, if you really like how it looks on you and it makes you feel good, you shouldn't worry about what anybody thinks. But if you really do want constructive criticism, it might be worth a lot from an honest friend. I've always dressed a little different. I toned it down in places and tweaked my fashion so it fits more with me. Everyone's different and there's plenty of different reasons why people wear things. I take a lot of inspiration from things that can easily be considered gothic, making my overall look darker in colors, mood, and even in theme. A lot of clothing I wear is pretty simplistic at its core, but what I really love about something is the small twists and details that make it stand out just a little bit, without being way too in your face, in my opinion. Like my favorite tank tops that I have. They're a thick cable knit pattern to it that changes the overall vibe from a normal tank. It's not quite a fishnet shirt, that would be a little out of my comfort zone, but it's just different enough for me to love these. And to have multiples of them. Most of the time I dress in a pretty simplistic, smarter kind of look. So I wear a lot of things like just plain black t-shirts, button-up shirts, thin belts, and dress pants. Now, thin leather belts are commonly worn with smarter wear, but thin leather belts with studs on them for an extra detail makes you look at them in a completely different way. I love the way the silver pops out against black as well. And I love the punk and rebellious attitude that the spikes bring to the otherwise simple and even semi-formal fit. This leather jacket with studs on it. This jacket caught my eye because of the unique studs on it. They're not raised spikes, so they almost look like bolts to me. And it reminded me of Frankenstein that I was rereading at the time I got this. It made me think of the bolts you'd see holding the monster's skin and limbs in place, especially the ones going around its neck. I love horror movies and media in general, so whenever I see something even mildly Halloween or horror themed, it really piques my interest. I already noticed stores putting out their Halloween stuff, so it's going to be very hard for me to control myself. Most of my jewelry has a skull or something that would fit in the Halloween theme. And since I wear a lot of plain black clothing, the entire outfit doesn't seem obnoxious and over the top to me. The jewelry is meant to be the focal point, giving the outfit some personality. So how to be more stylish? Have a personality. These are just some things that I wear a lot. I wear all black a lot because I just personally think it suits me. Maybe you prefer brighter, warmer colors just because of how they look against your skin, or maybe because you're naturally more louder, extroverted, and fiery. What colors people like to wear differs so much from person to person. Purple is actually my favorite color, just most of the time I feel like it's a bit much for me.
This is like my favorite shirt though. It's kind of purple.
So take your time finding your own style. It might be fun to mess around and find looks. It can be fun to mess around and find things that you really like the looks of. It's going to take some trial and error, but try to take inspiration from things and people that inspire you and see what ends up working. I'm not telling you to put on a dress or something if you're a guy, but if you want to, then go right ahead. I'm just saying to maybe get outside your comfort zone a little bit. If you don't agree with something I said in this video, let me know in a comment. I'd love to hear what you guys think. And if you're still watching by this point, thank you for watching the video, and like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you and the people around you dress alike and you're all being your genuine selves, that's great. But if you're being your genuine self and still find that you don't fit in with anybody, just keep